Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Ruralpreneur podcast. Here today with Chad and Brandon from Rural Cloth, and we're going to talk about their story. But I'll give you just a snippet of information before they get going. They have an apparel, outerwear brand targeted at people, kind of Americana, Western theme, t shirts, hats, all this kind of stuff that's really cool, made for rural people all over the country. It kind of resonates with the way that you live and the way that you have your values and everything. So I wanted to bring them on today because they've got a really cool success story. They've grown this business online and they're shipping packages all over the country. So without further ado, I'll let you guys tell your story.
Cool, man. Yeah, the story. The true story is that be careful what you wish for, in the sense of, So I always talk about people when it's ask about starting businesses, and it's really rare that I think you run into a business owner that if you ask them the question, you say, hey, like, if you could see everything and you know what you went through to get to a certain level, would you do it all over again? And I think unequivocally that answer is always no, because if you could see it, the fear would paralyze you. Like it so the good news about, it's kind of that classic story about just, you just keep swimming, right? Like until you finally find some land. Um, because if you knew all of the pitfalls and all of the different things, and if you had a crystal ball and you could see these things, you would never. I don't think anybody would ever start a business. I always, remember listen to Evan Hafer talk about, Black Rifle Coffee whenever, COVID was going on and things like that. And one of the things he said about, he said he would rather die than start over. And I mean, really relate to that because, I think then, I don't know that I'd rather die, but I'm not far from it. You know what I mean? In a sense of absolutely having to start over because, starting a business is not for the faint of heart, and it takes a lot of hard work and it takes a ton of risk. And, but anyway, you ask about the story. I mean, the story was really just about finding an endemic brand that spoke to a rural consumer. Um, I grew up rural. I grew up, spending every summer on my grandfather's farm. Chad was a baseball player, hunted, fished, has hunting dogs, and, kind of regardless if he lived in more of an urban community just outside of Oklahoma City or not, like he still, had ties to that whole rural lifestyle. And, and that was the biggest thing for me is wanted to create a product, wanted to create a product in a company, um, that could identify with a rural consumer, regardless if you did live in town or not. Maybe now you live in New York City, but you still have this real longing for, those summers on the grandparents' farm that you experienced growing up or whatever. And I think that just because now you live, inside of, yeah, inside of a big city doesn't mean that you're not necessarily have rural roots, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, small town rural lifestyle, yeah, there's a population factor, right? But at the end of the day, it's about kind of like a way of life, a lifestyle and values. Because I'm with you, people ask me all the time, what do you define as a small town? I said, well, we could sit here and talk numbers, but at the end of the day, it's kind of how you live your life and how you see things and the activities and the values that you enjoy. And so it's not always about specifically where you live, that plays a part into it, I guess you would say. But
Right.
no, I hear what you're saying, man.
Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of it. I mean, that was the thought process behind starting the brand. I think, now looking back on it, we really just turned 5. We started in the summer of 2018. It's now kind of the end of the summer of 2023. So we're really just a 5-year-old company. Um, just not knowing, it was literally kind of a wing and a prayer because I had no idea how to do any of this, right? Like it's all been kind of trial by fire.
Well, they say most businesses, or they say the first 5 years, 80% of startups fail, right? So you're already in that top 20%. And then they say, the next 5 years, another 80% of what was left fails. So, I mean, you guys have made it
Great.
there. You're already 1 in 5, so you're doing pretty good. Um,
Oh man.
You're telling me there's a
Yeah,
chance.
yeah. You're telling me there's a chance. Oh,
uh,
huh.
cool.
I've actually never heard that second stat, and I kind of wish I'd still never heard it. So it was always the 80. It was always the 80 to 90% fail inside of the first 2 years for me. That was always the first one. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, so tell me this. Tell me more about the brand. Tell me about the products you guys sell. What's the best sellers? What resonates with the consumer the most? I know you've tried some things that have probably worked, some that haven't. But tell us a little bit about what's worked and what you've seen as you've marketed the products online, the learnings that you've kind of taken from that.
Chad.
Yeah. So when the brand was originally started in 2018, Brandon had this vision of going after a lot of the larger brands that didn't align with rural values, right? Like the Patagonias, the North Faces, things of that nature. And so the initially we launched, and the brand had jackets, it had flannels, it had all kinds of things, really, really nice quality outerwear pieces. And we learned really fast that it takes really deep pockets to establish those kind of things in a presence, right? I mean, you're not going to just buy a random jacket, despite the digital advertising world that's out there. There's a lot of cost to conversion to get somebody to buy that. Well, Brandon just so happened to have this idea of America We Grow beer and America We Grow whiskey that celebrated, the wheat and barley and hop farmers of the United States. It's something that inherently we do produce here in the U.S. and celebrates farming and ranching. Plus, it's fun, right? Like everybody drinks beer, everybody drinks whiskey, and those products kind of caught fire. And the irony of that, and you're probably not going to like it for this podcast, talking about in a digital nature. We were very heavy on the digital spend side in the first couple of years. I mean, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year the first couple of years. And as we kind of talked about before this thing, we dug ourselves a pretty good hole. And when COVID hit, quite transparently, we were more than $500,000 in debt at that point in time, not knowing, with no upcoming sales, backs against the wall, and bringing it full circle to what I was saying, kind of contradictory to the digital side of things. We had a couple of wholesale accounts, rural farm and fleet stores that took a chance on us, and our stuff got in there with Raised in a Barn, the Rural America wheat flags, our America We Grow beer, America We Grow whiskey. Even to this day, We Grow beer and We Grow whiskey make up 70-80% of our overall sales. And 95% of our revenue comes from farm and fleet stores in rural America.
I got you.
Now, having said that, there's a very important component of it that we don't view digital marketing as a net revenue driver for our business. It's marketing. At best, we break even, but it's a very necessary component that allows smaller businesses like ours, in the terms of, you're talking the hundreds of $1 million of company like the Ariats, the Wranglers, the Carhartts, that are out there, that can go and spend in all the like six-figure sponsorships on places. Having digital advertising components there allows us to compete against them, because we don't have to, and we can still get in front of those eyes. But like I said, 90% of our gross, and probably 98%, 99% of our net revenue comes from the wholesale channels in farm and fleets that are supporting small town jobs. They're supporting small town America. It's the farmers and ranchers that are going in there to get chicken feed, horse feed, everything that they need, tack, from the Western stores that are out there, that's saved our business. And ironically, a huge portion of it's come from the We Grow beer, We Grow whiskey. Brandon's got the American Cattle Co. hat on his head. That's a new brand we've kind of launched in the last year and a half. It's really taken off. That's not quite as knee-jerk impulse buy as We Grow beer and We Grow whiskey. It's an Americana brand that's celebrating the American cattle rancher, and the backbone of our country. Quite honestly, I mean, there is no United States, there is no food security without cattle ranchers, and that's kind of the thought process behind the American Cattle Co. brand, and that's taken off really well. We've seen a great response to that, and it's growing and chipping into the impulse buy of some of our other kind of just graphic-y stuff.
Gotcha, man. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the misconception, is that sometimes, well, going back to what you said earlier, is that we don't always have to drive all of our revenue through the internet. We view e-commerce as going in, we have to sell products online, but sometimes it may just be that it's a more of a marketing component than it is an actual revenue driver. But if you're building some of that brand awareness, some of that brand loyalty, and instead you're using that to drive traffic even to the physical locations, that's okay. That's still an entire marketing strategy on its own that works while still utilizing the internet. So I mean, you know, hats off to you that you figured out how to adapt and kind of pivot there and make it work, because maybe not everything can be sold directly through Facebook, but you can always still market yourself and build a following that way, right?
Well,
So I think that's pretty neat.
it's really comical, right? Because in the digital world, and Brandon will laugh at this because I came out of undergrad and then grad school, and I was going to take over the world, and I wanted a return on every single bit of ad spend that I had, right? If I spent
Yeah,
$1, I wanted to make three. We weren't going to do anything unless I could show the net profit. And if there's anything that owning and running a business, especially 5 years into it, will teach you from a humility standpoint, is that I don't know what kind of listenership you have here, but you can bleep this out later. But 99% of us are dumbasses, right? Like what we think is not accurate. And I
yeah,
was gung ho. Brandon will tell you I'm a terrible person to argue with because I'll make you second guess everything that you think just because I can convince you that I'm right. And I'm extremely stubborn. And I was convinced that everything that we did, we had to make money on it. And then I realized, the internet's just a cheaper way for us to do billboards. It's a cheaper way for us to buy commercials. It's a cheaper way for us to do the Super Bowl, halftime show. A smaller company can't do that, but we can spend $250 a day or $200,000 of our budget online and make sure we're getting eyeballs that they're not necessarily conversion based. Do I get a perfect ROAS or a MER from your online metrics? No, but the product's moving at farm and fleet, and it's marketing, and it's a little bit of that hunch aspects that come with all the good marketers.
yeah. No, that makes total sense. And the thing is, a lot of times we think we know what the consumer wants, but we need to let them tell us what they want. And that's why we do testing, and that's why we put out different messaging and content and headlines and copy and all of that. Because you're right. Sometimes we just know we know that we're right. We know we've got the answer, and we try to shove it down people's throats. And in reality, we need to step back and listen and see what the customer has to say, and see what the listener, the viewer has to say, and then pivot in that direction. Because at the end of the day, we're solving a pain point, right? Like Brandon, like you said, the whole reason that you started this is because you felt like there wasn't maybe clothing brand that resonated with people like you, with your values, and everything was on the other side. And so the pain point was that it wasn't that you couldn't buy t-shirts, it wasn't that you couldn't buy jackets or whatnot, but you listened to a customer pain point, you had a pain point, so you wanted to solve it. And that's why we have to listen, because that's how we can ultimately find those solutions, and market ourselves correctly, right? Instead of always having to find the specific ROAS or force a product out. So gotcha, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, moving on, guys. I want to see if you can tell me a story, a pivotal moment in your journey as an entrepreneur, when I guess when you really knew that this is what you were supposed to do, that you were an entrepreneur. Kind of that moment where pursuing this just made so much sense. Kind of tell me a story about that.
That would
I
you
feel like
know, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, man. Like, I mean, when you are when you were an entrepreneur, I don't know that ever. I don't know. I mean, I think for some, for some people that have built and sold businesses or different things of that nature, like I think, once you're on the complete other side of it, but the risk of being an entrepreneur, the stress of being an entrepreneur, I don't, that's why I tell people all the time. I'm like, you can. I just had this conversation with my daughter today. Um, you know, she was talking about like what she may want to do, when she graduates high school, which is, going to be in a year and a half. And I'm just like, sometimes you're the windshield and sometimes you're the bug, or, you got to decide which one you want to be. And sometimes being the bug's not such a terrible idea. Like, there are a lot of people that have made and built really good careers working for other people. And, um, sometimes that's not a terrible thing. But to go back to the entrepreneur thing, like, that's the stress and wondering if you're right, and thinking that just because, because look, now we have an extremely healthy business today. We carry no debt. We have cash in the bank. We are, we're cash flow positive. Like, I could go on and on. We're not over inventoried. We're not in a inventory, we're not in a terrible position like a lot of businesses could be, or probably are. But the stress of wondering, if you're going to continue down that same path of growth and chipping away like that, that's always there. It doesn't matter how successful you are, how successful you think you are. You always, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, you always feel like the other shoe is going to drop at any time. So, I don't know. I think, Chad and I had this conversation a lot in the past couple of weeks, and certainly had it a lot, when COVID really first hit. We seem to do very well under pressure. Like when you back us into a corner, that's when we likely perform our best. We're probably not the greatest is honestly in the position that we're in right now. Where it's like there's not a massive debt wall staring us, there's not a massive inventory issue staring us, there's not all these things that are just staring at us that we have to fight our way out of. So that's probably this, as weird as that sounds, that's a scarier place for us to be in and live in every day than the other. Like, as weird as that sounds, like I don't know how to explain that, but
It's almost like
it's
you've
just
gotten, yeah, like when you get comfortable, you kind of stop watching
So,
things as closely, or you might make a mistake. Whereas when you're under pressure, you're checking out every single little thing and making sure it's perfect, because if you screw up, you could make things a lot worse. So I understand that for sure, being under pressure.
so the
yeah.
funny part about it is, and you started this with, a story of when we found out we were entrepreneurial. And if I'm being blatantly honest, I don't know that I've ever found that out. I don't know if I've ever figured out that I'm entrepreneurial, that I want to be entrepreneurial. I could tell you, like, Brandon and I couldn't be more yin and yang when it comes to life. He's extremely risky. Um, Brandon didn't go to college. I went to grad school. Brandon's one of the smartest people I know in life, and he's the epitome of people of understanding what a real world education is. Because I think he's got more value in his real life experiences and the risks that he's willing to take and his entrepreneurial experience than the stuff that I learned going all the way through grad school. I have this weird sense of, man, I read textbooks, I took exams. This is the way things are supposed to work. That's A, B, and C, and that equals D, and this is how it's all supposed to go. And he'll tell you better than anybody. I melt down if things don't go that way and they don't go the way they're supposed to. And I honestly, like, and I don't know if you're religious or not, but I thank God every day that He put Brandon in my life, because there's no way I'd have been able to accomplish what I've been able to accomplish without him side by side in what we've done, because he is entrepreneurial. I am not. I think if it wasn't for Brandon saying, hey, like, you need to come over and do this, I need you to help me with this, I'd probably be an accountant or something super laid back, that's controlled, that's safe, because I don't like the unknown. And if you want a story, kind of building on what Brandon said, if you'd have asked us a year ago, and looked at our balance sheet and said, hey, in 1 year, your balance sheet's going to go from this to this, both of us would have said, that's incredible. Like, we're so excited about that. That's wonderful. That's exactly where we want to be. That's better than where we want to be. And we're in that position today. And entrepreneurism is constantly working your tail off while feeling like the rug is going to be pulled out from under you at any given moment. And if
Yeah.
you can't handle that, you're not ready to be an entrepreneur, because that's what our day in and day out is. It's going, is this still going to be here in 6 months? Everyone, if someone were to look at, our accounting system, they'd be like, oh, you guys are fine. Everything's great. We don't feel that way. And if you're not
Yeah.
ready, if you're not prepared to handle that, then you're not an entrepreneur at all.
So it sounds like, the way I can relate to this. I think it's interesting that you guys are so different together, because my wife and I, we say that I'm the gas pedal, she's the brake pedal, because I'm risky. I'm willing to go for it. I went to college for 6 weeks and left because it was not for me. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. So it's like, for me, it's, yeah, the kind of like, just life lessons and going through it. And then my wife, she likes things to be under control. She likes to plan. She likes to make sure that we know what's happening next. And so anytime I have all these ideas, I'm throwing them out. Let's do this, let's do that. And she's kind of brake pedal like, wait, let's apply some logic first and make sure that, this makes sense before we just go out on a whim. So I think I can probably relate to you guys, relationship there a little bit because, like I said, that's how we describe ourselves as gas pedal and brake pedal. And you have to have both things, right, to make it work. So it sounds like you guys have a good team. And
Both of our
that's
wives would
probably
probably claim our wives would probably claim we're married to each other too, anyway. So that makes sense.
awesome. All right. Well, next part, guys, I just want to hear kind of one of the best, and we've talked about this maybe a little bit, but kind of your one marketing or growth tactic that's worked more for you, not just a tool that you recommend or something or Facebook ads, but like a mindset thing, like how you approach marketing and growing your business. What's the mindset that you have to get into in terms of finding new paths of revenue and getting out there, making the brand known? Like what's a unique way that you can share with our audience to that maybe a way they can apply to their business?
Oh, that's a tough one. In a sense, because we're finally just now as a company into the position. I mean, to where we're going to start taking some of those actual marketing shots. I think early on, like Chad said, we spent a ton of money in the digital space to really kind of put ourselves in a hole. But then it can be argued, like, what was the value of that brand building, right? Was it just delayed revenue? Is because and it's unquantifiable. You just never know, right? Like you just it's a really hard to figure out. Um, I think if you look at the past 18 months, for us, it was really anchoring into our retail partners as much as anything, and just, making sure that our relationships were solid there with, the farm and fleets of the world. There's some of your people may not have ever heard of, but Atwoods and Murdoch's and the D&B Supplies, Cow Ranch. I mean, that's just four or five. Right? There's just four or five that come to the top of my mind. But they're all equally important. But us really anchoring into that and getting shelf space, because as important and as critical as digital is, I understand that it's there, but I think you go back 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago, and everybody's like, "Oh, the stores are going to die. Stores are going to die, and digital is going to take over everything, and nobody's ever going to go anywhere and shop." Like, that is just not true. And I think now more than anything, that's probably proven to be more of a reality, that you're not going to see people. They still want to go in store, they still want to touch things, they still want to have the shopping experience. That's just not going to stop for them.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with that. I think it's a full circle kind of. You have to look at the entire strategy and not a one or the other. I mean, you look at today, you look at companies like Walmart, right? You can go online, you can order, et cetera, or do the store pickup and go over there and still pick up the items or still go in the store. And so a lot of these larger retailers are also doing kind of a combination of both, and they're saying, hey, we want to serve customers if they want to come in our stores, but we also want to offer, if it's an e-commerce option or delivery or shipping or whatnot. And so I think there's a play for both, right? I think it's not a one or the other. And I
Yeah.
agree with you that brick and mortar is not going to go anywhere.
No, no, definitely not going to go anywhere at all.
Yeah, it's difficult for Amazon to ship horse feed and hay and things of that nature. So
That's
I
right.
don't really.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotcha. Okay. Well, hey, that's still a great strategy. I understand that, especially in the space that you're in. Sometimes with customer acquisition costs can are constantly rising online. Digital marketing is getting more and more expensive, and it can be tough to make it profitable on lower ticket items as well. Something like a T-shirt or hat that doesn't cost a ton. You're trying to, like you said, Chad, make it profitable. That can be challenging for a lower ticket item. So I do understand that as well. All right, guys. Well, you have anything else you want to share with us?
No, man. I mean, just at the end of the day, I think we're super thankful to be where we're at, and continue to move forward and promote the rural lifestyle, and with the continued launch of our American Cattle Company brand as well, and things of that nature. And yeah, probably hope to not sound like a Debbie Downer in this situation, but I think from our entrepreneurial standpoint, I think it's you absolutely got to go for it. Just go for it. At the same time, be prepared to get kicked in the teeth, because you're going to get both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of
and
bull
just for
riding.
clarity purposes, this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
our third business together. So it's not like this was a first one. This is our third opportunity of working together, and we won't talk about the others because they're not
I don't
around.
know too many entrepreneurs that have only gone for one business. Yeah, there are plenty, but I know myself. I mean, I can start counting them. I'm going to use all my fingers up.
Yeah.
So yeah, once you, like you said, it's in your blood. Once you do it once, you just you're kind of part of it, and you know, you pursue other things. But yeah, just get started. I agree. Sometimes, you know, we do paralysis by analysis, and sometimes we just got to get started and then kind of build the airplane as it's flying through the sky. So, all right,
Yeah.
guys. Well, I'm going to tell everybody to go visit your website. It's ruralcloth.com. Of course, they have a large network of brick and mortar retailers as well throughout the country selling their products. So it looks like you can kind of access their products wherever you may be. But thanks, guys, for coming on with us today. Really appreciate you promoting the rural small town lifestyle out there. And good luck in the future.
Cool, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Sure,
you.
guys.